practice does not make perfect. Practice makes. Hey everybody, welcome back to Church Talk. We're talking about everything involving the local church. My name is Rob, and today we're talking about click tracks. All right, guys, I wouldn't say there's an argument, but there are different points of view when it comes to your worship ministry using click tracks and backing tracks and those sort of things. And I'm just going to give you guys my take on this. I have been involved in ministries that use them and been involved in ministries that don't. And currently we do not. And I will say that I don't ever plan on using them because personally I'm not a fan of them. But I want to hear what you guys think. I know there's a lot of different points of view on it. I see a lot of talk about it on Facebook, and there's a lot of other videos out there talking about this. But if you don't know what backing tracks are, now this is coming from my perspective and my point of view. And if you like click tracks, you're going to disagree with me, but it's okay. But many years ago, like 20, 30 years ago, it was like people would come to church with a special. They would bring their cassette tape or they would bring their CD, and they would perform I hate to use the word perform, it's what it is. They would do a special, and they would have that day win soundtrack, that it come in a high, medium, and low, and you picked your key, and you would put the tape in, and it's supposed to be already ready because, back then it wasn't just, it wasn't ready. It was on a tape, so it's supposed to be ready. And you'd always put it in backwards, and it's the wrong side. It messed up everything. And then we come out with CDs to where they're like, okay, it's track number 4, and so you put it in. It's track number 4, but for whatever reason, you still got it wrong. It's supposed to be track number 3 or whatever. And so when I hear the backing tracks, it takes me right back to that moment to where we used to bring in CDs and it was just canned music. And there's nothing wrong with canned music. There's nothing wrong with that when that's what you have and that's what you're using. The Lord will receive your worship, whether you are using an old cassette player, if you're using a old piano only, if you are using backing tracks, if you are using CDs, if you've got YouTube up and as the band because you don't have a band. The Lord will receive your worship no matter how you are worshiping. But I will say that when these accompaniment tracks begin to come out and make their way into the church, to me, it just takes me right back to that old CD and that old cassette tape that somebody would bring out, and because it sounds exactly the same. It's just it really is the same. It puts me back in that mindset. But also what I have found for me personally is that when I'm listening to a backing track, and well, actually, let me back up. Number one reason I hate backing tracks is because you are hearing instruments that's not on the stage, that's not coming from your people in front of you. And so you are playing with, it's almost like when you're practicing with the CD, you're practicing with an MP3, you're practicing with a track. But then when you bring it to the church, it's like we always just dropped the track out. We didn't have that. We just played what we had, and we generated everything, all the sound that you hear. Well, when I go to a church and it's like they don't have an acoustic guitarist, I play acoustic guitar and I hear acoustic guitar. I'm looking around like, where's that guitar at? Then I find out, oh, it's a track. And then you'll hear violins, and you're like, where's the violins at? It's in the track. And to me, it just coming from a musician, I'm like, I just, I'm not a fan of them. I like to be able to, if I'm in the congregation, I like to be able to watch the people who are on stage, who are playing those instruments, because I play, that I may pick something up from them, see how they're doing, how they're making their chords, learn from them as well. During those times when my eyes aren't closed and I'm not engaged in worship, I might be listening to how that guitarist is playing a certain part, and I'm learning from them. Or maybe I'm hearing how the keyboardist is playing certain parts, and like, oh wow, I'd like to put that in some of my music. And I'm watching people of how they're doing that. Keyboard is a little bit more difficult because you can't go up and watch them, but your guitarist and your drummer, those people, you can see what they're doing. They're very visible with the instrument right in front of you. Um, so yeah, for me, when I hear those backing tracks, it's just a personal preference of mine. Like, I just don't like them. It feels like I'm cheating. You know, you know what I mean. But now I know there are a lot of people that really love them. That makes their band. They feel like that makes their band sound bigger. Maybe that's where you're at. It's like, we don't have the full band that we would like to have, so we put in some backing tracks and it makes everything sound bigger and fuller. I get that. I understand that. But from my thoughts, my perspective is I would rather not have the full sound, because my thoughts on this is that if we sound perfect, if we sound all put together and excellent, and we only have a three-piece band, but it sounds like we have a 10-piece band, nobody's going to come and say, "Hey, I play an acoustic guitar. Uh, I think an acoustic guitar would be a great part of the band." They may not want to do that because they hear the professional on the track, and they're like, they don't need an acoustic. They found it in a track. They don't need a bass player. They've got it in the track. They don't need me, because my instrument is found within the track. And they may not know that you would rather have an actual instrument there, but in their mind, they're like, they've got everything they need. I'm not going to come to them and tell them that I play an instrument, or that I would even like to play, because they've got it taken care of. And I'm not as good as what that track is. I'm not as good as the writer of that song, or whoever has recorded the track. Now, the other thing is, when you change keys on the tracks, they can sound kind of weird. Um, that's been some of the complaints from some of the guys that I know that use tracks often. They're like, they hate to change the key on it, because it really makes it just does something weird within the acoustic guitar. Um, and they're like, it just doesn't sound natural anymore. And see, now for me, it doesn't sound natural when there's not somebody in front, or not somebody present that's playing that instrument. That's just my thought. Um, People love them, people hate them. I don't think there's a right or a wrong, as long as we're doing things the right way. A good friend of mine, James Branham, he was on one of the videos that you saw in the past. I'll put a link to that video where we were at his church at Kings River. Now, they use some backing tracks, and he uses it as a tool. But there comes a point in the service where he may look over his drummer and he's like, "Hey, cut that, cut it, because you know that's not the direction we're going to go." And they use it as a tool. And this is one thing that I really did like about a click, or even not so much the backing tracks I can do completely away with, but the click itself. If we are starting a song off and there's no drums, and we all need to be together, and we can make sure that we're on time, that click can be a good thing. It's just giving you that beat when the drummer isn't there. But myself, I would rather, once we get past that point in the song and the drummer comes in, turn the click off and let us be with the drummer. I like to be able to have my timekeeper be the drummer and not a click machine, because there are some songs where I want to speed it up or slow it down on purpose. And with a click track, unless unless you can program it to do that um, on the fly, because I lead on the fly. I mean, we've got a set that we're going to that we plan on doing, but at any moment within that set, we may do something different. I may hear the Lord say to do this song, or continue in this do the verse again, or do the chorus again, or just play through it and come back into it in a moment, or you know whatever the case is. And I know if you're good enough with that tool, you can do things on the fly. You can change a lot during your leading. Um, but to me, that's a distraction, and I just don't like them at all. I would rather just not have a click. Period. And now practice with the metronome. Have your drummer practice with a metronome. Your keyboardist practice with one. Practice. I think a metronome, or what's called a click now, is great to practice with. But I think that's where we really need to keep it at, because um, I wouldn't want my band to be dependent upon it, because there was a bass player that we knew years ago. His name's Roger, fantastic bass player. And he told me, he said he used to play all by ear, and I mean he was really really good. And he started playing in the church, and um, he was getting his music together, and he would put it on a stand, and he started reading through the music as he was playing, and he lost his ear. Now, when he was put on the spot, he could still play by ear, but not near as well. He needed to have that music in front of him, and he told me, he said, um, "I wish I would never place music in front of me during church. During practice, I can see it, and it's like, but I need to turn away from it and keep my, because he let his ear get lazy, and he lost. I won't say he lost it, but that skill, instead of being sharp and being sharpened, it got dull and was not usable to him anymore. And he told me, he said, I am stuck now on reading charts. And I feel like if we never if we do that with our music, if we do that with our click, with our even with our words. I've noticed this with the words, because there's a lot of songs, that so many different songs out there. It's like it's hard to know all of them. So I do have the words and everything in front of me, but I try to look at the people more so than I look at the words. But there are sometimes where I need to glance. I need to glance down at the words and make sure that I'm correct in what I'm thinking and where I'm going. And even some of the chords that we play, because when you play by ear, the chords can be a little bit different, what you're hearing versus what the entire band is playing. And so sometimes you just got to make sure that you're on. But with a click and with a guide and all these things, if we get used to that and then we take it away, say for instance, you're playing an acoustic set, your power went out, you don't have that, and now you feel limited because you don't have the tool that you're used to. Or what could be really bad is you sound amazing and great in your church, and you're invited to go somewhere else, and they don't have in-ears, but they're using wedges, and now all of a sudden you don't have that availability for a click in your ear, or for a guide to be telling you where to go. And all of a sudden you're put on the spot, and you don't have that tool you're used to, and you become accustomed to it. Now what do you do? So a couple things to think about. If you're a team, or you're a leader, and you are constantly, you've got the click and you've got these tools, try to take those things away every once in a while and develop your skills as a musician to play together. Because there are some I listen to some of these, like Jacob Hunt from Kings River, a great drummer, and he's got a channel that he covers drums, and you can hear the click and I listened to some other drummers. Jacob's not so much, but there's some other drummers that I've heard where the only thing I hear is the click and the drums and very little bit of the actual music. So what that drummer is hearing, um, he's playing to the click and to the guide, and it's like, how can that drummer, or how can that person, if you're playing to a click and a guide, and you barely have any uh, any of the leader in your ear, or you barely have any of the guitarist or the keyboard in your ear, how can you play together and play off of one another? Or you just performing the song as it's written, and you're just performing that song. You may as well just turn the radio on. You know what I mean? Maybe just turn the track on. Um, but I think there's something that can be said for teams that will um, play with each other rather than use that tool. And I'm just going to go ahead and say it. Use that tool as a wheelchair. I was going to say a crutch, but I think sometimes we get lazy and we just sit down in the chair. You know what I mean? And it's not that we are really, you take that away and we can't do it anymore. I think we should develop our band members to where if we take that away, that they're not stuck and they're not like, what do I do now? Because I feel like that's where a lot of bands may be, because they get so used to that, and when you take it away, it's like, I don't know where to go. Now I could be completely wrong. There's probably a lot of bands out there that play with them all the time, and they're professional in their craft, and it doesn't matter if they're playing with it or without it. They can play either way. But for me, leading, it's like, it's so weird. It's so weird to try to lead with the click. And I would always, any church that I was at, and they had a click. If I was just playing the guitar, yeah, I could play to it. It's okay. I do feel like I'm not really worshiping, because I'm so concentrating on where that guide is telling me I need to be, trying to listen for that person to tell me where to go, rather than just because it's so dry. It's like you got the music flowing, and then there's just someone just speaking. Same thing as like an MD. They're just speaking into a mic, telling you where to go. It's like, it's so weird. It's just awkward. And I'm listening to where to go. So I'm in this performance mode of trying to make everything right for the people, and right, in the moment, that I lose what I'm really doing. And I feel like it was just an obligation and a job. But when we take all that away, I can just kind of get into the music and play it for the Lord. And as we change, and as we communicate with each other through nods and through different ways, that I'm not lost in the moment listening for something to give me direction. Um, and like I say, this is just me. I know there's a lot of people that agree with me, but a lot of people that's going to say you're completely wrong. I think they're great. But comment down below. Tell me what you think. What is good about them? What's bad about them? And if you guys use them, if you used them and stopped using them, if you wish you could use them, or you're like, I don't even know what you're talking about. What is a click? If that's you, and you're like, what are you talking about? A click is only a metronome. It's all it is. It keeps you on time, but it is in an in-ear. So if you're not using in-ears, you won't be using any clicks, because it's going to sound horrible. But for me, if there's a click in my ear, it does sound like a hammer hitting me it feels like a hammer hitting me in the back of the head. It's just gives me a headache after a couple of songs. Drums don't do that so much. They're different. But a click is just so dry, but it's needed for practice. When you're practicing by yourself, you're not with the band, because a lot of times the band will keep you in. But if you're practicing by yourself, you do need to have that click or that metronome, so that you can stay on time, because practice does not make perfect. Practice makes permanent. So what you're practicing is going to become what you always lean toward, where you always go to. So that's going to be your permanent way that you play. is how you practice. So if you practice incorrectly, you're going to be playing incorrectly. But if you practice correctly and you practice in time and on time, then when you go to perform a song or you go to play a song, then you're going to be playing it. It's going to be natural to play it correctly. So if you take away anything from this video, let that be it. Practice correctly so that you can play correctly, because your practice makes permanent. Practice makes permanent, not perfect. So that's my take on click tracks and on backing tracks and all those things that we're using today. And say if you use them at your church, there's nothing wrong with it, inherently wrong with it. I think it's just a personal preference. My personal preference is I just do not like them at all. I've played with them, and I've played without them, and I prefer not to have them. But you may be on the other side of the fence. You're like, hey, I think they're great. I will always use them, and you don't know what you're talking about. Comment down below and let me know what you think and what you like about them, what you dislike about them. But also, if you're using them, and there may be some other people watching this video, it's like, I would like to use them and I don't even know where to begin. Number one, you can go back and watch the video I was talking about with James. He was sharing where you can get those. Or if you would, just comment down below if you're using them, and comment what you're using, where you get them from, and maybe a price point. Because if somebody is looking to start using tracks and they don't really know where to even look at, they don't know where to start, if you would comment and say where you could go to and help that person out, that maybe they can go check them out, see if they like them or dislike them. Because you never know unless you try them. I wouldn't sit here and say, don't even try them, because it may be something. My thoughts on this is some bands really need them. If you're not at the place to where maybe especially if you're a drummer, if he's the timekeeper, she's the timekeeper, and there's some timing issues, well, if they start playing with a click, they're going to be on, and then everybody else can be on with the drummer. So there are huge benefits to them. Not everybody needs them. Not everybody should use them, but some people really need them, and some people just like to have them as a tool. So I don't think there's a right and a wrong answer with this, but it's more of a personal preference. But I do think that some bands could really benefit from those tools. So if that's you, you're like, yeah, I think I could. Take a look in some of the comments. Maybe comment down below as well, and somebody can answer, and you guys can comment back and forth to each other and find out some resources of where you can go to get them, and maybe what are some of the connections that you need to start using them, or maybe not to start using them, but to check them out and see if it's for you. Because, like I say, they can be some really good tools to some bands and some leaders. Some leaders love them, some leaders hate them. So, guys, that's my take on click tracks and backing tracks. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you want more content like this, let me know by liking, sharing, commenting, things of that nature. And we'll see you guys next time on Church Talk. God bless you.